Okay, we are continuing through our list of teams to get through in these team previews before the 2021 Overwatch League season, and today we are taking a look at the second Ps in the pod. Okay, that sounded better in my head anyway. This is the Philadelphia Fusion. So, Philadelphia Fusion, they've been a team actually... consistency is kind of weird for the Philadelphia Fusion, right? They're always there and thereabout, but apart from 2019. That's kind of the way we look at Philadelphia Fusion. So, obviously in the inaugural season, they finished 6th, which was slap bang middle of the league, but top 6 went to playoffs, and, well, they ended up in the grand final against London Spitfire, losing in the end. So, that was a great season for them. Then we move round to 2019, and they kind of got caught out by the GOATS meta. It wasn't Carpe's strength, obviously, and some stuff, so they finished middle of the league again, so that's consistency, but this time it was 10th, and they didn't end up getting through the play-ins. And that was pretty rough. And then, turning around for 2020, despite all the turmoil and everything, Philadelphia Fusion finished in 2nd, but massively underperformed at the playoff stage. Massively underperformed. They were the worst performing teams in the playoffs, and that was a very massive surprise. Well, I say playoffs, I say grand finals, I should say. They really suffered in the grand finals. They did well in the playoffs, but in the grand finals, they fell behind the likes of Seoul and Shanghai and San Francisco. It was pretty rough. So, it was an experience for Philadelphia, but there are changes at the Philadelphia Fusion this season. There have been some changes every season for the Philadelphia Fusion. There's never been a full overhaul, but there's always been these different minute changes to try and get the best version of the Philadelphia Fusion for the following season. It's not always worked, but it did work out pretty well in 2020, so can they make the few adjustments they needed to push themselves a little bit further and find themselves on the top of the pack instead of just lagging behind, which always seems to be the Philadelphia Fusion's thing, right? Still no championship on the board. Still, so many second places, Philly. So many second places. It's heartache for Philly fans, and I feel ya. So, moving on to those changes then. First of all, we're going to look at the more, the sort of coach side of things, because there's only been one change, right? So they're holding on to Saito and Moby Dick and Christopher, the sort of real spearheads of Philadelphia Fusion since 2019, especially Christopher. It was really early 2019 that Christopher came in. And then we see a new head coach though. So this is 9K, and 9K comes in, and he's going to make a significant difference to this team. He did very well as the manager of Paris Eternal last season, and before that he was coach alongside Krusty at the San Francisco Shock. So 9K has a wealth of experience. He's coming in to replace KDG, who was head coach last year. KDG has ended up moving over to the Toronto Defiant. And there was a lot of questions over KDG's choice of people at times to play in the playoffs, when he was playing Hisu over Carpe, when they were playing a bit of Widowmaker and stuff like that. I mean, you can argue till the cows come home, he's no longer there now, and 9K comes in. Arguably, it's an upgrade. And we will see quite how that works out for Philly, because there have been a lot of changes that have come with that, and we'll see. Are they for the better? It's up and down. A lot of them can be like for Philadelphia Fusion here, so it's going to be super interesting to see how this works out. On to the roster then, and we're going to talk about the people that have been let go. There are 6 people moving out of the Philadelphia Fusion out of that 2020 roster, and they will be replaced by, well, 3. So it's a scaled down roster to some extent, and that's understandable considering the current times. But let's take a look at this then. So first of all, they're letting go of Boombox. That's not too much of a surprise. We didn't see much of Boombox last season, and he's kind of surplus to requirements at the Philadelphia Fusion now that Alarm is there. Alarm is just so versatile and plays what Boombox used to play for the Philly Fusion. So he's now left the Philly Fusion. He's now at Young and Beautiful, actually, in EU contenders. Young and Beautiful are actually doing very well. And then we see Chipsa leave. That's not too much of a surprise. We saw Chipsa for a grand total of 1 map for the Philadelphia Fusion all season. Let's be honest, he was a bit of a PR signing, and it's not too surprised to see him gone. Anyway, then we have the bigger changes. So, Sado is out of the Philadelphia Fusion. Sado was a big weak point for me in the playoffs for the Philadelphia Fusion. He had a really consistent regular season. He had a really, really consistent regular season. And it was like Sado had turned a corner, and then come playoffs, it was like, poof, it's gone. So Sado's consistency was a major problem for Philly, and that's been solved by basically just kicking him out. He's now at the Toronto Defiant and followed KDG. Not too much of a surprise, and that's going to be a running theme. But yeah, that's one that's I don't think it's going to affect him too much in terms of letting him go. It's the replacement. That's the interesting one. So then we have Fury. Now, letting go of Fury, I thought was a massive problem. Like, Fury and Poco, they had similar playtimes, and I'm not sure what this is about, really. I don't know why they dropped Fury. Maybe they just couldn't keep hold of two excessively good main tanks, off tanks, sorry. So they had to get rid of one of them, and the one of choice was Fury. They wanted to keep hold of Poco. Maybe because Poco's been there, he is OG Philadelphia Fusion. The only other remaining OG Philadelphia Fusion is Carpe now. And I don't know, to be quite honest, but he's gone to the Washington Justice. It's a massive coup for the Washington Justice to get him alongside Mag. And that's going to be a really interesting preview when we get to it. It's one of the last ones, but, you know, it'll be a really interesting one to take a look at. Then we see Ivy moving out. Again, a big surprising move. But that was a surprising move at the time in which they let him go. I am not too surprised that Ivy has gone now, considering the recruitment that Philadelphia Fusion have done. So, yeah, we will move on to that in a minute. He's now finds himself at the New York Excelsior. We've already been over that in the New York preview. Check that one out if you didn't already. And then lastly, we see Hisu move out. He follows KDG to Toronto Defiant as well. That's not too much of a surprise. I think Hisu was a KDG signing very much. I liked Hisu. I liked Hisu's ability to play Sombra and things like that. I think that's something that maybe might be an issue for Philly this season. However, we have to remember, we have to take into account, this is going to be the first season that Philly play in the East region. Last year they were NA, not APAC. But this year they are East, not West. So they are going to be playing in a region that heavily relies on things like Tracer, things like Sombra, and things like Dive. And so this is what we have to take into account for the Philadelphia Fusion running into 2021. And it could have had a major impact in what they decided to do with their roster. Who knows? Anyway, we move on from those letting go and we move into what we see now. So Carpe and Poco, I've already mentioned them, the OG Philadelphia Fusion boys to remain on the roster, the ones that came in all the way back in 2017. Carpe obviously still holding that team captain role. EQO retains his place on the Philadelphia Fusion, although I believe he is having some visa issues for the East region right now. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue, and it'll be interesting to see if that's worked out in time. But EQO is not going to be the starting DPS for this team, almost certainly, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Alarm, obviously, still on the roster, that flex support god. Alarm was obviously a massive pickup for Philly last season, and rendered Boombox pretty much useless. Alarm was never going to go anywhere, let's be honest, and Philadelphia Fusion will obviously be holding on to him and his superior support play for this season. He will be probably most likely one of the best flex supports in the league once again. Then we see that Funny Astro is still there. I think Astro is also still having visa issues, which is very worrying. Very, very worrying. And hopefully Fusion can get over those problems before the start of the season, because obviously that's going to be an issue if they do, or they play on high ping, one or the other. So Funny Astro will be remaining on that main support role. I like Funny Astro, one of the best Lucios in the world, if not the best Lucio in the world. His Mercy is still good, his Brig's okay, Alarm can also play Brig. Astro's a great main support, can't argue with it, and I like that they've been able to retain him. So then we come into the signings for Philly Fusion, and this is where things get spicy. So, the replacement main tank for the Philly Fusion will be coming in from the New York Excelsior. This is Mano. Interesting one. Now, Mano is up and down, right? He didn't really suit Hotbur last season, and when Bianca came in for New York Excelsior, it kind of settled down slightly. But Mano's been up and down. He came into the league as one of the best main tanks. He was one of the best, if not the best main tanks in the league in the inaugural season, that's for sure. He is one of the best Winstons. Like, he's a phenomenal Winston player, Mano. He really, really is. And will still rank up there as one of the best Winstons in the league. And he was alongside Gesture in that inaugural season, as I said. And if we continue on in the vein in which the meta is going, then if the current meta is going to be the meta when the Overwatch League starts, I am almost certain that the East region will play Winston Zarya, or some form along that line. I don't think it will gravitate more to the EU brawl. I think we'll see that more in North America. And so this could be where the Philly Fusion are kind of lying with this. He still has a strong Reinhardt. We can't take that away from him. His Orisa and Wrecking Ball are still very good as well. So Manu is a good signing. However, Manu has always been known as a passive main tank. And that's the way New York Excelsior always played. They were a passive team and capitalized on people like that. It was very clever. And this Philly Fusion is an aggressive team. And this is where the questions start to be asked. And it's the only question I now have about this Philly Fusion team. It's if this all gels together properly. And it may well do. Mano was... The New York Excelsior last season tried to mold Mano into a more aggressive main tank. And that was evident with the signing of Hopper. Hopper's a really aggressive off tank. And it didn't really work. It didn't really work, did it? And I wonder if Philly are going to go down that route, or whether they're going to adjust back trying to be a more passive team. I don't see that with the likes of Alarm and Funny Astro and Carpe and people like that. I just don't see that. So I think Mano is going to be pushed more to this aggressive style, and it'll be interesting if they can get the value out of Mano that the New York Excelsior didn't really get out of him when they asked him to be aggressive. So that is going to be a big teller for the Philadelphia Fusion this season in a very tough region. Like Shanghai, Seoul, very, very good region. And I'm going to be interested to see how that one works out. So moving on, and then they signed 2 more DPS players. So the first is Shockwave from Vancouver Titans. This was rumored for a long time. Shockwave really made waves at Vancouver last year. He was by far their best player and has a phenomenal echo. And also has a pretty good, gosh darn good Widowmaker. Although I don't think he's going to be playing that on the Philadelphia Fusion somehow. I think he's here mainly for his echo play. Mainly, I think he's going to be a proper echo specialist for this team. I don't disagree with that too much. And their other flex DPS, EQO being one of them, and the other one we're going to talk about in a minute, are definitely going to be able to cover every single area of that. It's not going to be a problem. So I think Shockwave's more of that down that route, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. I don't think he's going to get a massive amount of playtime unless we are definitely in an echo meta. That's all though. And then the last signing is a big one, because this is where I had problems with Philly. Because until this signing literally happened on the 15th of March, so it hasn't been all that long. And I had problems because they were relying on EQO and Shockwave for their flex DPS, and I thought that was a major weakness of Philly. Major weakness after letting go Ivy. Ivy was really good. And they have answered this with the signing of Rascal. And that just completes this Philadelphia Fusion lineup very nicely. It really, really does. Rascal is insane. Let's be honest. He's had his problems. Didn't get on at London because he got benched half the time. He didn't get on at Dallas because, well, it's Dallas. But he left, obviously, the San Francisco Shock. And that was like, what? But at the end of the day, he wasn't getting a massive amount of playtime at the Shock because the Shock are stacked. Like, no matter what you say, the Shock are stacked. And the Philadelphia Fusion, Rascal will get a lot more playtime. Like, with the Rascal signing, I do not understand what EQO is there for. Maybe Genji? I don't know. Like, Rascal is going to be really good for Philly. He fills so many holes I saw in this DPS line. And now I don't see any holes in this DPS line. The only problem with Philly, and this is why I liked Philly last year, is because they signed Hisu. And because they signed Hisu, it meant they stopped having this reliance on Carpe. And now we're back to Philly that has a complete reliance on Carpe. Again. And that happened in 2019, it happened in 2018. 2018, the meta was great for Philly. And it really snapped, and Carpe was one of the best players in the league. In 2019, when we hit GOATs, yes, we're not going to hit GOATs, but when we hit GOATs, all of a sudden it caught Philly. And it caught Philly bad. And that's what worries me. So, yeah, that's the only thing. I don't like a reliance on one player on any team, if I'm honest. And I think Philly rely on Carpe a lot. A heck of a lot. And so imagine if for some completely unknown reason, Carpe got injured. Like Birdring did for London Spitfire in 2019. Or 2000... Was it 2018 or 2019? Can't remember now. But imagine if something happened to that, like that to Carpe. What would happen to the Philly Fusion? They would have a significant gap in their hit scan. A significant gap. And yes, there would be adequate, like Shockwave and Rascal, to pick up the pieces, but it would be nowhere near the level. And it would be a weakness for Philly. So that's what worries me. But it is still a stacked roster. Like Carpe, Poco, EQO, Alarm, Funny Astro, Mano, Shockwave, and Rascal, providing it all knits together nicely, is going to be one of the best rosters in the league. However, they are in a very tough region, and we will keep reiterating this because, you know, they've got last year's finalists in that region, they've got Shanghai in that region. I mean, it's going to be difficult, but we've also got teams that are mixing things up in that region as well. So, first 6 matches for the season for Philly. First match will be against last year's finalist, so this will be Seoul Dynasty. This is going to be a difficult one to call, because this depends if Seoul take the season seriously. Like they didn't in 2020, let's be honest. They relied on tournaments and playoffs to get them where they wanted to go. Hence they finished like 11th and made it to the playoffs. But this Seoul team will probably have to take this season more seriously now, considering the format of it. So I still think, however, providing all of the stuff falls into place with this passive-aggressive Mano getting that balance right, providing that works, I think Philly will win this. So that's what I would say with that one, but it should be really close. I hope it's really close. And if Seoul start doing stupid things like they were doing in the next cup with taking profit out on 2CP, then yeah, Seoul won't win that. Simple as that. You can't sub profit out. He's your Carpe, Seoul, basically. Then we have Philadelphia Fusion versus the Immortals Valiant as the second match of the season. That should not be a problem for Philadelphia Fusion. That should be a definite 3-0. Then we see Philadelphia Fusion take on the Hangzhou Spark in the third match of the season. That could be closer. However, Philadelphia Fusion should have too much quality for the Hangzhou Spark, in my opinion. Hangzhou Spark do have a very deep roster. And difficult. It's difficult because I don't think they can match them. Like, the Hangzhou Spark may be able to match them on the tank line, but I think that's about it. The DPS should be able to outdo the Hangzhou Spark, and so should the supports. And that should really see Philly over the line in like a 3-1 win or something. So that's what I would say for that one. Then we have Philly versus Chengdu in the fourth match. Again, similar to Hangzhou, I still think Chengdu have the ability to take a map, if not really surprise Philly, but Philly should be able to get past them. They should be able to, but we always say should, right? Because we never know for sure, but they should be able to get past them. Then we see them take on New York Excelsior. Again, New York are an up-and-coming team. Philadelphia Fusion are well-established. They should be able to get past New York. It could be a 3-0. I'd hope for New York's sake, they take a map or so off, but it will be interesting to see Mano go back to his old team for the first time. And then we round back on the sixth match of the season with Philly versus Chengdu once again. Same story. Although, for the New York and Chengdu matches, the two last ones, that will be in a hero pool. So we can't predict them exactly because we don't know who will be banned. And yeah, we don't know who's going to be banned in that hero pool. So that's going to be very difficult to call, but yeah, Philly should be okay. And I would hope Philly go at least, I think Philly could easily go 5-1 if not 6-0 in the first six matches of the season. I think this is where Philly will start to come unstuck against Shanghai. And on that logic, you would put Philly as the second best team in the East, but they could be the best team. I don't know. Philly's a difficult one to call. It's going to be interesting to see them in the season, actually. I'm really interested to see how they do in the East region. And it also depends on whether these people with visa problems get their stuff sorted. Anyway, that's going to be it for the Philadelphia Fusion. We are really cracking through these now. And coming up, we have the S's, so the San Francisco Shock, the Seoul Dynasty, the Shanghai Dragons. That's going to be super interesting. After the Shanghai Dragons, they're more East region, and then Toronto, Vancouver, Washington to round things off. And then we'll be looking at power rankings and the preview of the first week, which is not that far away. But all the socials are linked in the video description as per usual for Illusion Gaming and myself. Give them all a follow or a join or whatever the relevant word is for relevant social media platform. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.